overwhelming Twitter's reduced moderation team. This is really crazy, interesting, more so than people think. It's one of, you know how sometimes there's headlines that I say, oh, that's interesting, and most people don't even realize why it's so interesting. Here's why that's so interesting. So China's interest in Twitter at the moment, right? Twitter, Elon Musk is one of the few people who has, one of the only American entrepreneurs of note, tech entrepreneurs, who has, for lack of a better word, a healthy relationship with China. Does that resonate? Can I say that? Does that work? We're off to a good start.
Healthy is a strange description, but
Cordial.
rather we say like need
Well,
each
I mean,
other. That's what
they
you got.
clearly conversate. They clearly have meetings. You see what I'm saying? They're excited about him building factories, about building the cars. You know, you would be hard pressed to name other CEOs or even American companies that are doing as much business in China. Right? Am I right? I'm right.
Yeah,
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So now that opens a window of opportunity. A little crack. The door is opening. The iron door is slightly ajar because at this moment in time, there's a slight potential possibility of an opportunity given Elon's previous business with China that Twitter could, I know this is a stretch, happen in China. Right? Now, hear me out. Did Elon Musk 48 hours ago tweet out that he sees a path to having 1 billion users in the next 16 months? Now, do you see a path to 1 billion users without China?
In India,
Africa.
Both, yeah. India and Africa. You might need all three, honestly. For
And both of those are heavy WhatsApp orientated regions at the moment.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah,
yeah.
Facebook.
Let
Yeah, but
use VPN.
let me unpack this a little further. Elon is familiar with doing business with China in a kind of notable scale size, and knows what. Clearly, you don't get to the point of where Tesla's at in China. They've built 1 million cars in China. You don't get to that point without knowing how the government likes to do business, right? So, and our friend Cal Patel has had firsthand experience with this. It would be fantastic. I'm sure Cal's listening. Cal, this might be one of those moments where you might want to jump in, my friend. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So, if given Elon's, situation with China, he might be able to introduce Twitter in China in a way that he knows they will welcome, for lack of a better word. And we'll leave it there. But this article about China seems to be flooding Twitter with porn, mentioning places where people are protesting. I know why they're doing that. Okay, now I misunderstood this article. This article is about this is very clever of them, by the way. So when people are talking about the protests in China, China's trying to, because they can't erase that stuff, so they're trying to flood the zone with content that's even more eye-catching than the protest videos, which is porn videos. So if they can keep you distract you, instead of watching the bar fight, watch the beautiful two ladies over here, French kissing seems to be the Chinese strategy they're employing here. That's kind of clever.
It reminds me of Metal Gear Solid. It's definitely a Hideo Kojima thing, because in that game you play a secret agent who once in a while can take out a Playboy magazine of sorts, drop it on the ground, and the soldiers go, "Huh? What's that? Oh," and they get distracted, and you can pull off whatever you needed to do. So it's definitely an interesting tactic.
But
So
by the way,
Tyler,
Yes.
The,
Go
the
ahead.
porn stuff has a different connotation too. So I kind of did this with the Occupy protesters in 2011. What it does, it prevents you from being able to look at it at Twitter from an office, from a school, because all of that is blocked by proxies. So if
Aha.
people, right, and that's kind of probably end
So
game on that.
so for Tom, let's put that in street plain English for folks. They're trying to make the content flaggable by semi-automated systems. Um, so by attaching lots of nudity to this genre of tweets, it makes the all the genre of tweets of Chinese protests. The algorithms start to associate Chinese protests with porn and start pulling the stuff down so it's not as visible. For like, is that where?
Or auto blocking it. Yeah,
Right,
it's auto blocking it from being viewable in certain networks.
right,
It may even be cyber cafes as well.
right.
Well, it
That's
seems like China's
interesting.
finally. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No,
Very
so you
clever.
have to ask a hacker how to do it. So Tom, that's interesting.
No, Tom, yeah, that's totally now that it makes perfect sense why they're doing it now when you explain it that way.
No,
Because
I also posted something else that was interesting on the Twitter world. So apparently there was a leak. So someone, and we knew this was going to happen with the mass firing in Exodus. I tweeted it out to you. There was a leak of 5.4 million users' information from Twitter.
no, WhatsApp.
No, that's really old. It's from last year, and it was in back in July.
There's a new
It
leak from
was
WhatsApp, a tremendous, huge leak from WhatsApp, 300 million.
500 million. And then they broke it down. And then if you go and analyze it, you can look at it country by country. And they think the US was on the top with about 34 million.
So the second article is Chinese protesters are holding up blank pieces of paper as a protest against censorship, leading platforms and censors to quickly remove the images. Now, cultural context here, the Hong Kongers did the exact same thing. When the protest started in Hong Kong, they held up signs that say free Hong Kong. They would get the living daylights beat out of them by the police and other thugs that got hired from mainland to come across the border into Hong Kong. And the Hong Kong protesters got shut down. There was a lot of them. In fact, millions. Hong Kong has about 8-ish million people, 9 million people. They had protests with like 1.5, 2 million people, right? And if you can get millions of people protesting simultaneously, you should be able to get your objectives, you know, negotiated, let's say. They did not. They got shut down hard, really hard, and very brutally. And so if they can do that in Hong Kong, where there's free press in Hong Kong, all over the place, every journalistic outfit on the planet has a office of note in Hong Kong, and they were all there recording all of it. In Chinese mainland, they don't have those press have been kicked out of China mainland because of the they were you know investigating the whole Uyghur situation, so they all got kicked out. So the press is not in mainland China. So these protests in China, the crackdown is far easier to do in mainland than it is in Hong Kong. And these mainlanders are holding up white sheets of paper. Well, guess what? That didn't save the Hong Kongers. They still got cracked down on for the white sheets of paper, which is this you're basically saying I'm being silenced. I can't even hold up a white sheet of paper. No, that will become the national security law in Hong Kong said, no, that's still provocation. We're still shutting you down for holding up a white sheet of paper. So these mainlanders have a once in a lifetime opportunity, literally, to try and do something. It looks like it's a groundswell. This is a very serious situation. Grassroots effort. No doubt the U.S. is instigating it on some level, and their parents did Tiananmen Square, and Tiananmen Square got shut down before social media, before facial recognition surveillance on everything, and your smartphone tracking every fucking thought you're having before you have it. The China now has that. The CCP now has that. So good luck recreating Tiananmen Square 2.0 when this time the state has way more tools than they ever could have dreamed of having last time. For example, they very well might, and this is the thought that's going through my head when I see these protests and the lack of brutality against them. The state is interestingly barely responding to them. I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, but it's very possible that they're sitting back, letting them do this, knowing we know who you are. We'll come to your house tomorrow and have a nice little chat about it. Oh, and by the way, those COVID emergency cities that you're seeing news about lately? Yeah, you know what? It turns out you have COVID. Sorry. Yeah, some new magical test that we have here. It's an app where we scan your face. Sorry, you got COVID. Time to take you over to the new COVID hosting facility. Uh, Somebody will be by with your lunch sometime tomorrow. So they could have a bulletproof plan of how to deal with these folks in the age of social media with the tech advantage that the state now has. And if so, and I believe they do, that is going to be for a very formidable force or foe to try to take down. I don't know. No, it's hard to imagine. It's hard to imagine how this is going to play out.
Tyler, exactly like you said. They're gonna after those people after the media quiet down. And just like you say, the health code, because if you get a red health code, just like the protest back in the Henan Bank, their health code became red immediately after they step into Henan province. So
Right.
that's the reality. That's
Well, and just to unpack it for those who don't know, they can control instantly, now that they have Chinese digital currency in your app, everything's on your phone now, your ability to get on the subway, train, or the bus near your house, or the ability to move to the next town, or to buy anything instantly. They can turn you off and brick you at will. So these protesters had better take great care to conceal their identities and leave their phones at home if they want to have a chance.
and right now they haven't forbidden the mask like in Hong Kong. So maybe they can consider better because in Hong Kong, in the end, they didn't allow people to wear mask. But right now, because of COVID control, people are asked to wear mask. So just like Tyler says, still has a chance, still having a chance to
But
consider reality identity.
the facial recognition in China is so powerful. Even behind the mask,
Yeah,
they can still
yeah.
recognize
But
you. So I
at
don't
least
think
they
you can
can
hide.
wear the mask and the mouth and the hat in some good reason to at least hide yourself.
So BBC tweeted out about this that blank sheets of paper have become an iconic item during China COVID protests. Many are now referring to the moment or movement as the white paper revolution. Well, that's by BBC. That's the first time I've heard that phrase, and I'm looking for a phrase like that. So I think you're revolution matizing here. I think you're trying
But
to
in
provoke.
Chinese, I mean, in Mandarin, that exactly what it is. It's they take a piece of A4 paper. So
Yes,
some people joke that
the A4 revolution. I
that
love
should
that.
store
That's a,
out of
that's a
A.
cool fucking name for a revolution, by the way. The A4 revolution. I'm down with that. Anyway, uh, the West wants this to happen in a huge way. Huge way. Oh, and by the way, do you recall that Iran was having protests? They still are, and it's turning into a bit of a revolution, at last I heard. And it wasn't that long ago Russia was having a bit of it, and then I said, well, guess who's next with China or whatever. Um, anyway, it's the good guys, the three countries that kind of got together with their grand plan to get the world off dollar as the default.
You mean the good leaders, right?
Yeah, the nice guys, who don't like being stuck on the dollar and having the U.S. trade sanction them, and they want to be able to do what they want to do. And they coincidentally are the countries that have locked down all the freedoms for their citizens and removed the free press from their citizens, because they like doing good things and they don't like the press reporting on all the great things they're doing. And yeah, so anyway, keep that in mind. The next big story is BlockFi files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. What? another crypto project up in smoke. Protected and plans to lay off large portion of its staff and says it has $256 million in cash on hand. Bloomberg says they have sources. Turmoil at Foxconn's Zhengzhou hub is likely to lower the iPhone 14 Pro production by close to 6 million units in 2022, potentially worsening as lockdowns continue. That's the one you were on when I came in. So now we go to the next one, which is Reuters. Elon Musk claims all-time high Twitter signups, averaging more than 2 million per day in the 7 days leading up to November 16th, up 66% year over year, and user active minutes of about 8 billion per day, up 30% year over year. And kudos to, and let's see who else is willing. So Elon shared a tweet yesterday, 24 hours ago, saying we're having record traffic, we're having record signups, we're having less hate speech than before I took over. And all of the things that the press are accusing Twitter of having more hate speech, crashing, everything else, is now being exposed in terms of data as complete and utter poppycock. And in fact, not only wrong, but opposite. It's everything is better than ever in every way. And all of this fear mongering that you've been doing, you've now exposed yourselves as not only fake news, but just dead fucking wrong news.
But he
Fake,
forgot to talk about the bots.
fake dead wrong news.
How
I'm
about the
sure the
bots?
bots.
He
I promise.
conveniently forgot.
No, they're going to come out, especially when CBS last week when they pulled out, and then they had. I mean, they pulled out on Friday, came back Sunday, because they probably realized without Twitter all the revenue that they were losing. That would be one thing, and then the other thing, Tyler, as you were mentioning in the three country, you forgot the fourth one in the BRIC, because remember all the protests in Brazil
Oh,
and how the
yes.
millions of protesters down there. So it was pretty much all four BRIC countries where these protests are happening,
That's so weird how that happens.
and all in the same time.
How about India?
India's still in the good graces of things, you know. Anyway,
Playing their cards right.
they're playing their cards right. That's for sure. Yeah, they are playing the hand very well, actually. So Taylor Lorenz tweets out that setting a calendar reminder to follow up on this, trying to cast some shade, implying that what's happening at Twitter, according to Elon, is going to be short lived. And well, we'll see, Taylor. Uh, we shall see. But as of right now, everything we should have set a calendar on your headlines from 2 weeks ago that everyone should download their tweet history because nobody knows if Twitter's going to be around next week and all the advertisers are leaving and the sky is falling and he's firing so many people that the servers are crashing. Get the fuck out of here. Look, you all of you just exposed yourselves. You all just exposed yourselves as tabloid, at best, tabloids. At worst, saboteurs, which you in some states might be able to be sued for if there's malicious intent, which I believe there is. And why exactly? Why exactly are you bending over yourselves to willing to throw your journalistic pedigree developed over hundreds of years at the New York Times? Why are you willing to shit all over that? For what? Why? Yeah. Why exactly? What is it about Elon's Twitter that is willing to get you to, rip up your hard-earned reputations and now be exposed as just complete frauds? It's wild, totally wild. By the way, by the way, by the way, some people, many folks in this room will recall that when Tesla was starting, a lot of people made similar comments about Tesla going to fail. The car industry, nearly identically, the car industry and its press. There's a lot of car press. Most even people who aren't car people probably know Car and Driver, and there's other very popular magazines, whatever. And Top Gear, the TV show, they all came gunning for Elon and Tesla, making fraudulent claims as well. Who did get sued? Who it was proven did manufacture fake news about Tesla when they would do reviews of the cars and say the car ran out of battery at X amount of point, and turns out Tesla has data, and they looked at the data, and that's not what happened when you test drove the car.
You really think the AI car wasn't paying attention? So I thought that was interesting because they had a script, and the script was recovered beforehand. I think one of Tesla's people mentioned seeing a script, and the script in the court documents, it was revealed that they were writing a story. They're not a news organization; they're entertainment, which seems to be the cop out every time the a UK organization gets in trouble. It's like, no, 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 no. We're just,
Are you talking about Top Gear?
we're entertainment. We're just for shits and giggles.
Right. So the point here is though is that in this has happened to Elon Musk before, in precise nearly identically, when Tesla was starting with the cars and the car media, because the big car companies wanted Tesla to fail very much, and they're very threatened by it. And just like big media is threatened by Twitter today, as it should be. And just like Tesla's now by far the biggest car company, Twitter likely will become the biggest media company. And they're scared shitless. And they're trying to sabotage it, just like the car companies did. And they're doing exactly the same thing, manufacturing completely cockamamie bullshit and then getting caught for it. Right? Now, more importantly, did it could also be done because most mortal people, when an industry is trying to sabotage you, don't have the fortitude to stand up to all of the media and legacy industry trying to sabotage you. Most people don't have the fortitude to stand up to it. Elon has proven that not only did he stand up to it, he's was somehow empowered by it. And I would like the journalists to know who are currently doing their best to sabotage Twitter. I got a little secret for you, just from me to you, as somebody who, used to have meetings with Elon because he was on the board of our startup, He's empowered by your bullshit. He runs on bullshit. He's feeding on your bullshit and using it as fuel. So keep it going.
Your
He,
bullshit energize him.
and he's even hinting at that. If you know him, if you can read the tweets if you can read between the tweets, he doesn't mind that you're doing it.
And you're also paying $8 for it.
And he's memeing you by saying that's nice, pay the $8.
For the privilege.
Hey,
So
Bill Gates makes a vaccine. I don't
I
want
get
your
that.
nanobots. Elon makes a microchip that literally goes inside your brain. Shut up and take my money.
Anywho, on to the next story. WhatsApp begins rolling out message yourself feature, letting users send notes, reminders, and shopping lists to themselves. I do that all the time, actually. Already, I figured out a clever hack on how to. I'm curious to see how they did it, but I've already been doing that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's
Um,
old.
yeah. Yahoo takes a 25% stake in Taboola and plans to use Taboola's ad tech as part of a 30-year exclusive deal expected to generate more than $1 billion in annual revenue. EU lawmakers claim the markets in crypto assets rules, expected to be approved next year, would prevent an FTX-like crash, but some say the proposal needs updates. Coinbase names 4 executives covering Ireland, Germany, UK, and EMEA to lead its expansion in Europe. Okay, so Coinbase wants to expand in Europe. New Zealand says Twitter failed to detect or remove clips from the 2019 Christchurch terror attack until the government alerted the company. Okay, in New Zealand, that was the biggest tragedy in modern New Zealand history. and I'm not going to belittle it I'm not going to make a joke here or anything like that. That was a truly horrific, tragic event, and it deserves, a modicum of, sober. I'm not going to trivialize this and make fun of anything here, out of respect. But that incident didn't make much news in the U.S., for example.
What made
If
a
you
ton
ask,
here? Are you kidding?
if if you polled Americans about the name of the city where this happened, or the name of the person who did the massacring, or any detail at all about this, you'll get crickets.
I was in Christchurch when it happened, and I had people all over the world suddenly emailing me, calling me, saying, "Leanne, are you okay?"
I don't doubt that for a second. My point is, Americans have trouble spelling the city they live in, let alone cities and countries, or knowing New Zealand. This is, if even if it was news momentarily, uh, it, Kanye's, anti-Semitic stuff will be was arguably a bigger news, and will be long forgotten in 4 years, as this was 4 years ago. It's kind of my point. This is, uh, I can understand how in New Zealand, if this content being on a platform would still be expected to be dealt with, and is very serious, and because it's perhaps one of the biggest things to happen in New Zealand in a very long time, and we have similar things happening in the U.S. quite frequently, unfortunately. We had entire cities burning down, and not so long ago. So the relatively to the amount of craziness that happens in the U.S., this is kind of low on our radar, and maybe not on the radar, and hence, yes, you might need to tell the company and remind them that this is important to take down, and no doubt they will. But I don't know that this deserves a headline at the moment. But
Yeah, but
anyway,
this, when it happened at that time, I think it was huge because this guy actually live streamed the attack, right? I forgot
He
whether is
did.
it on Facebook or on Twitter.
I
I
don't
forgot.
remember. Back to my point. I don't remember if he did or not.
No,
Yeah,
he
it was
did.
live streamed. Yeah.
Pretty sick. I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
take out a few people, drive somewhere, take out a few more. And I think where it lost a lot of context, honestly, Tyler, is because COVID happened like months later.
Could be. You could be right about that. I get it confused with the Norwegian guy who went to that island. It was like
Well, yeah, I think this speaks to a common kind of a problem that many nations are having. So, to what extent did Twitter in the past maybe not do such a great job, but now that Elon's at the helm, apparently he's all open for suggestions. So, if people want to be constructive and point out things, I think this is, yeah, that's shitty, but that was the old boss. This is the new boss. So, what could the new boss do better, differently? I think that's a conversation worth having. So, to do better, to do sooner, I agree.
Hey,
You know what?
this is Elle. But the thing with Elon, though, we heard this weeks ago because it's amazing how everyone sounds different now when we're talking about Elon. Taking over Twitter, like he doesn't understand that this is different from running a manufacturing company because, there is the social engineering people aspect and type of engagement. So you can't just go in there and rip and replace. You can do that in some things, but you can't do that everywhere. And now he's realizing it. So there's many different avenues he can take. I actually have or know someone who is their company is working with Twitter with their whole identification authentication, and I actually gave them some ideas. But I mean, that's the thing. This doing software that engages or creating software that engages with people, especially on the social thing, is not as easy as everyone thinks. Especially when you're dealing with various different issues such as bots, such as the people's thoughts when it comes to freedom of speech and everything else. We know freedom of speech is not freedom of from consequence. So it's a delicate balancing rope. So hopefully he's realizing this now and will, listen to maybe or even talk to some of those Twitter employees that were let go. I don't know what their talent exactly was. Maybe he was letting go dead weight, or who knows. But hopefully he will, bite the bullet, look at those resumes or look at those talents and see where he got rid of employees at, and maybe bring some of them back. Because when you actually let go a large group of people, depending on how long they've been there, you also let go a lot of institutional knowledge at the same time.
Okay, next up is Ireland's Data Protection Commission fines Meta €265 million for failing to safeguard data on 500 million users from data scrapers, the third fine from the Data Protection Commission on Meta. So all of those stories we had about data scrapers aggregating data in dark tables on the dark web, and it's kind of like a commercial dark web where data is for sale and there's data brokers, and based on 10 different apps that all have 10 different data things, you aggregate all of those 10 different data points from those 10 different apps, and that shit's for sale. And you can do funny shit. And anyway,
So Tyler,
yes,
wouldn't the argument on that be is that Twitter gave you the control to protect your own data because they have their own security features, and that's the only way you can really stop the scrapers. Everyone's like, "Oh, I'm going to stop a scraper." I'm like, I've worked in tech long enough. You can't stop, some of these well-designed scrapers.
right. Yeah, the Facebook's going to have to coordinate itself in a way to put the burden on the user. That works in the US. That strategy is a US uh, positioned strategy, right? Onus of responsibility, whatever. And this is a subtle uh, but important difference with the EU, where the EU looks at the net result of it and says, it's still hurting EU folks, and the response. So it's this is it's not surprising me that these kinds of things are going to continue to come out of the EU and EU states like Ireland, where to a much higher degree, because they're taking what it is the EU policymakers are taking a much more user centric or defense posture rather than when it comes down to users versus the platforms in the US. The platforms get quite a bit of favored nation status, where in the EU it's all about protecting the users, in large part because these platforms are not EU companies. So why should we give them any kind of leverage in these kind of legal negotiations of sorts?
So then basically lock their accounts by default and force them to unlock the pieces would be the
Yeah,
simple.
yeah. Yes, that's how you would do it. Exactly right. You'd say, you flip the switch that says enable this, and then you'd have to do it where they weren't even incentivized to really do it, because then the EU would be like, wow, you tricked them by offering them something that they didn't understand. It's like it's going to be tricky. UK plans to criminalize self-harm content. Wow, a lot of content headlines today. You had the Elon Twitter Christchurch thing, New Zealand. You've got what was the other one? And now this one. UK going to criminalize self-harm content in the updated online safety bill in line with suicide content after the death of a teenager in 2017. Okay, so who's the criminal? The person who uploads it or the platform? I assume if it's from the UK that they're probably referring to the platform. Now, see what's happening. Governments are forcing platforms to do specific content moderation in each country, right? And now you know why Jack Dorsey's like, fuck this nonsense. I'm going to go make a truly decentralized one and tell you all to go stick it where the sun don't shine. Good luck forcing this truly decentralized system like Pirate Bay to shut down.
So what if I
And
want to commit suicide and I want to share my video with the world because I've suffered some sort of harm? I think there's many examples like that. So who's the criminal there? I think it's actually perhaps inappropriate in that situation to hold the platform accountable?
I don't know, but check this out. I have a theory here. Two of my dear buddies, who I've spent Christmas with in Bali, by the way, um, and we've been dear friends since the beginning of their startup. They are the biggest player in content moderation globally for a lot of these big platforms. And they started out, I remember when they had 13 remote assistants in Manila when they started, and I had access to one of them as my personal assistant. And they've now grown it to tens of thousands and billions of dollars a year. And then BlackRock bought half the company at $1 billion recently. And BlackRock knows how to play the political game. And so, is it possible that you get a super savvy mega hedge fund type who then knows how to play the political game and get policies made that favor, and you're the favored solution, and you're the only solution. So you create the problem that you're the solution to. So in this case, you've got this technology that your technology can fix, and now you made it illegal for your customer to not fix it. You following me? Just a theory. So the next is a look at OpenAI's Minecraft bot, which has learned to complete complex tasks in Minecraft after being trained on 70,000 hours of video and people playing the game. So now you have OpenAI building in Minecraft things that humans normally spend countless hours doing. And something tells me this bot's going to go a little faster than humans do. Does anyone else get that feeling? Um, and so you're going to see some really interesting shit happen
Yeah,
in.
but the beauty of like seeing a human or a child, like even watching my son and them build things is that, that the human created. It's cool that AI does it. We know they can do it, but it's just fascinating when, a group of 12-year-olds rebuild the Death Star, or, they build, what was it? Somebody, I think he was like a group of like college students redid the scene from Neverending Story, the princess's palace. I forgot what it was called. So I mean, it's
I'm,
cool, but
oh yeah, I mean, I'm all for. I totally get your point. What I find interesting about this is it's one more important step towards the AIs making the metaverse experiences, which is for the Star Trek fans, the holodeck, for example, where you will tell the computer, "Hey, computer, don't make me a Dali painting of Donald Trump on a pogo stick and a sombrero. Make me the World Cup, and I want to be sitting in the second row, sitting next to Albert Einstein and Marilyn Monroe, watching, you know, my two favorite teams play each other go." And it does it in full 3D surround metaverse reality because its ability to create these metaverse like environments. It's already doing TD, it's already doing video. Metaverse is next,
But
and
Minecraft also lends itself because of its pixel-like format. It perhaps is the lower-hanging fruit challenge for this kind of example. So I don't think people appreciate perhaps how complex Minecraft is, and that it's a simple interface, but there's almost unlimited complexity possible. So I think it's quite an achievement of the sort that you're suggesting.
I'm just saying we're on the path there, and we're going to get there because we're wired to make that happen. We are wired to manifest that destiny.
How
We're put.
how
Yeah.
long was it going to take for us to get blackmailed by AI?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I had a thought myself the other day. Um, think of this: why don't strip clubs and or Thai massage parlors have video cameras kind of concealed at the entrances or wherever, do facial recognition on the people that come in, and then monetize by contacting them and say, hey, we noticed you were here at this time at this day. Here's the place to send your Bitcoin if you don't want us to send the videos to your significant other.
Tyler, who says they don't have that?
They do have that.
I'm gonna
I know.
say, yeah, they do have that, but isn't blackmail
Tom,
illegal?
Tom, Tom, how much did they charge you?
How much? How
No, no,
much?
he's the one who coordinated the sting.
No, legally they have to do it to prove that there's no prostitution.
That is exactly correct because they partner with, depending on what state or city, they partner with the police department and actually do give them access to the cameras. So when a situation happens, if they have situational awareness, like a hub setup, they're able to quickly pull up the cameras and assess the situation and go in. It's literally the same stuff they use at the schools.
That's why the prostitution happens through an entrance through the kitchen.
Thanks for the information.
The Financial Times says UK police report financial losses from crypto fraud were up 32% year over year. Okay. Let's take
That include FTX
fundraising.
then?
Bloomberg says they have sources that the fall of FTX, one of the first companies to receive a license in Dubai, prompts concerns from Dubai officials over embracing crypto too quickly. Yep, you got a little bit of egg on your face with that one for sure. Wall Street Journal says how live action YouTube kids channels uh, are building global franchises. Okay. New The U.S. Department of Justice is investigating whether rent-setting software made by RealPage is facilitating collusion among landlords to drive up rental prices. Oh, that's interesting. An in-depth look at the U.S. sanctions on China chip makers and worries over their impact on inflation and rising costs for Western manufacturers and customers from Financial Times.
I wonder how long it'll take for China to have perhaps a advanced breakthrough, because there's a YouTube channel called Asianometry, and it's somebody who covers the semiconductor history and all these big stories. And he showed how at one point in history, Japan really galvanized and got together with the government and the industries and were able to make breakthroughs and advances that really outmatched the U.S. in several areas. So I don't think it's unreasonable just to think that how long will it take for them to catch up. So at best, this is a stopgap measure.
I'm not so sure. And the question is, will they truly develop it on their own or will they steal it? Yeah, because both
Oh,
are
okay,
those
yeah,
are.
that's a different question. I think they will eventually have the capability. How they go about that.
Are you familiar with the history of ballpoint pens in China?
No, no.
Well, the little ball at the end of a ballpoint pen requires that the ball be particularly smooth and round. Yes,
Yeah, so it's a Japanese IP. Yeah, they are experts in.
right. Do yourself a Google about the history of the ballpoint pen in Japan, because I'm sorry, in China. What year do you think it was when China was able to make ballpoint pens?
1998.
It was in that ballpark.
So basically, the first two products are still from Japan.
No, I'm okay. Hold on. Try. Hold on. And Lee Stanham in December 2015 at a seminar in Beijing, he said the Chinese pens felt rough. Somebody can do the
That
deep dive
in
on this.
2017, January
I
8th.
was about,
Yeah,
I was about to say 2017.
2017. Finally, China already China
Right.
can produce a ball pen all by themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, but until okay, here's a different story. I know something about pencils. So pencils, Germany and China are the only two main competitors. So first of all, it's surprising to me that Germany can compete against China with pencils. And so I went out of my way to buy Staedtler pencils from China and those from Germany, and there is a slight difference, but I don't know if it's worth the $3-4 difference in price. So I think there's a lot to be said for value. So. I guess that's where I was. Like, if
Uh,
you're
It's just
90% of the way there, you know.
the pencil
right.
technology and the ballpoint technology is totally
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, and less and less people writing. So I think yeah,
Just,
it might.
I just pinned it to the top of the room. China put out from China Xinhua News, which is the CNN of China, state-backed media, and they did a tweet on it. And the tweet has been this is the tweet from Xinhua News, like the CNN of China, saying, "We've figured it out. China has developed its own ballpoint pen tips, ending a long-term reliance on imported ones." In 2017.
When a ballpoint pen is almost obsolete because no one is writing
Well,
now.
it'll be the semiconductors next. Watch out. The Chinese, they're coming. Advanced industry is coming.
It might be a little longer than you might
Yeah, I
think on
think
this.
yes, just like Eric said
You
in
sure?
history.
Isn't that not a little bit of a stretch from me? Oh, my
Well,
bad.
how
Sorry.
long? How long? How long do we think? Like, let's put some numbers on this, make it interesting, right? What would you bet for how long it would take?
Yeah, I
Well, they
think
had
US
Well,
and
hypersonic
China will
missiles first.
reconcile before that happened.
They came out with hypersonic missiles first.
Yeah, but they need
Those
the
are
semiconductor chips, right? If they don't have that, they
well,
cannot
I
produce.
mean,
Yeah.
the hypersonic missiles are, let's be honest, they've been used very much for just showmanship. They don't have the capacity to actually, well, be used in battle yet. The Russians used
here's,
the
here's
missile in Ukraine as a symbolic strike on Lviv, but again, the
here's the
technology is a
critical
bit early for that.
the really critical
It's not
consideration
that effective.
in this conversation is when you have complex things, you have to own it from soup to nuts. So if there's going to be a grand decoupling, and like, newsflash, there is the if your supersonic airplane, fifth generation fighter jet, and supersonic missiles are dependent on uh, people on the other side of the geopolitical aisle, you don't know how to manufacture that, and you don't might not have the skills to manufacture that, or you're either purely importing it or delegating it or stole it or whatever. You're going to have to figure out how to do it in house, and that's a can be a much more painful process than most are assuming at this stage. Uh, and in that decoupling, this is precisely why the U.S. and its allies feel like they're on good footing. And I think seeing President Xi's comments in Asia and anywhere else where he's visiting lately, and he's campaigning on, let's not do this. Let's not go through with this uh, very. Um,
Please, I beg
uh,
you. No.
he's really now making a case for why we really, really, really shouldn't do this, and this would really, really, really be a very bad idea. The U.S. isn't going around saying that. The U.S. is like, "Fuck yeah, we're doing this. Let's do this right fucking now." So, which side do you think is confident about their technology?
Well, I just want to know timelines because I think the question of could they catch up if they developed it, that might take a while. I agree. If they steal it, to what extent could they steal it and how quickly could they steal it, right? Is a different kind of question that changes that horizon expectation.
I think it's
Yeah,
easier for China to convince Taiwan to get closer to them, and then have TSMC.
Yeah, but we are hijacked by the U.S. administration right now. Otherwise, how else would TSMC will move their 3 nanometer product there? So right now, and at least DPP right now, our ruling government is you know
Well, I thought China
trying
was
to help
courting
the
with
U.S.
ASML. I thought they were in
Yeah,
discussions with ASML to find ways of still working together because ASML is the core technology behind TSMC. TSMC is the
No,
fabrication
one
facility,
of
and
the
that's
one
a
of the
kind of
equipment,
discipline. But I would say at
one
least
of
the
the equipment. With
yeah,
only ASML, you can't build the
yeah,
you can't have
yes,
the chips anyway.
yes. That's why it's so. It's just like
I'm referring to the lithography machine. That's what I'm
yeah,
specifically
if you
referring.
only have that machine, and you still need the software from the US, and you still have this liquid from Japan, so it's very globalized. So it's not
I
like
agree.
TSMC can
It's all
manufacture all
interrelated.
the chips themselves.
Yeah,
So
I think it was designed that way to prevent any one major superpower from thinking that they could just start shit, right? So I think it's being tested. Those constructions are being tested now.
and just like you,
I think also,
oh,
sorry, B.
okay, go ahead. Okay,
I
very quick.
think, oh,
Very quick. I just Eric just mentioned that actually Japan in history actually they advanced over U.S. in chip industry once, but U.S. administration decided to destroy it. So that's an example of how the U.S. government or U.S. administration, if they decided to do something on this like this, they can do it. So that's what China is gonna face.
yeah, and just one of the things, I think this conversation is very valuable about the ballpoint pen. So I've talked to some people in older generations, and they've been blown away. They look at China as being stuck in the past with old technology, and when I bring to their attention the exponential growth of their technological capacity, they get blown away. And then they go on Google and then they look it up to be true. And then they're like, wow, I need to update my model of reality because it seems like they've caught up very quickly.
Well, yeah, but they've caught up quickly because they've been nicking half the blueprints from other people. Not for everything, of course, but you know, even
Spot
basic
on.
car models they've kind of nicked from other people. Like China's definitely grown a lot, but that's also the demographic dividend that has basically come to an end in the past 10 years, and they're now facing a demographic crisis. So I'm not saying that directly is a causation for technological innovation, but sure, if you have a demographic issue and a large brain drain, which China's suffered from, and that's going to affect their ability to, remain at the cutting edge of technological advancement. So China does face a huge depopulation issue, which plays into everything else: economic growth, technological growth, knowledge economy, cultural exchange, everything. It's massive.
Yeah, that's a great point. I wonder to what extent their publications output will be affected by this in fields like machine learning, which the researchers no longer have access to the kind of GPUs that are native to the West. So I think China was boasting very recently that they had huge like numbers of publications, most citations, or something like that. And I'm curious to see what it'll look like next quarter or the next year.
Did we discuss like how they are upsetting the church? I think
Oh
it
yeah,
was.
secret Vatican controversy. Yeah, Kyle. Kyle was dropping.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
that
was all
it
over
kind
that
of
one.
reminds me of how the English church came about. That they got upset with the English church, and then they just made basically exactly the same. It's exactly the same. It's just the king of or Queen of England is the head of church. So I wonder if they will do the same. I mean, communism and stuff is against religion, but if they can't convince everyone to not be religious, they might just do their own thing. I don't know what people think.
Okay, are we ready for the tweets?
I could quickly unpack that. When the Democratic nations, Biden had a summit for democracy. Xi Jinping had a summit for a Sinization of religion. They've changed Bible scripture. The Tibetans aren't able to have a picture of the Dalai Lama. The Uyghurs are internment camps. And yes, the history between communism and religion is quite complex. You could look at the head of the Russian Orthodox Church. and question whether or not he's a mouthpiece for the Kremlin or is he actually practicing his religious beliefs.
Yeah, I don't know. Usually, when big countries start hunting down different religious beliefs and stuff like that, it's usually a sign of that I don't know, empire to crumble down. Like every big empire, like Alexandria had, everyone had the main capital or the main city with characteristic of like huge diversity and freedom of religion and libraries and stuff like that. And whenever a radical came in and destroyed all of that, usually the empire shortly after would start going down too. I don't know, maybe it's a thing of the past and has nothing to do with China, but that's something I thought of.
Oh, it's not a thing of the past. So, game theory, if you were to look at super rationality and you were to look at the mixture between politics and religion, there's a reason why Xi Jinping wants to claim the next Dalai Lama. It would bring an extra component of the control that we just talked about. It would then have a state sponsored religious leader. So you could generate super rationality between your citizens and exert more control over the mind.
I would also point out that I think it was earlier this year, the Americans, I think it was Blinken, met with the Dalai Lama, which was seen as a massive snub to the Chinese, because obviously it's very important for India as well, and America's been trying to, shall we say, butter up the Indians to be on side vis-a-vis China and their belligerency in the Southeast Asian region, excuse me. So that was seen as a bit of a snub to the Chinese, and what we've seen over the Tibetan skirmishes in the past couple of years. So if the Chinese can influence the Dalai Lama, then that's a cultural one for them as well.
For those who don't know, there's a fascinating conversation on this point that we'll unfortunately have to just blow over. But the really interesting bit, if you ever get into this dinner party conversation, is the really crazy part isn't the Dalai Lama, but the Panchen Lama, who was kidnapped by China knowingly. That this isn't like any, they don't even really deny it at this point, and because he is responsible for naming the next Dalai Lama, and if he's been under house arrest his entire life by the CCP and they're never going to let him go, they just have to wait out the clock for the Dalai Lama to die, and then this guy is going to name. Then now the CCP names the next Dalai Lama. Basically, is how it's going to go down.
Only reason why I'm on Clubhouse. The top line of my profile ever since I've been on here was who is the real Panchen Lama?
Right. But go ahead and deep dive on that one if you want a really interesting rabbit hole. Somebody should make a really Hollywood friendly mockumentary about that, to or even documentary as best they can, to educate people on this whole issue. Um, Although, anyway, so it's a very depressing, sad topic from a pro Buddhist point of view. Anyway, so that we got the tweets, which is a fun collaborative process we do here, and you can do it too. You just send in your tweets by very simply including the hashtag the Twitter account TNATW as part of your tweet, and then we see it. Like these tweets that we're all going to name and retweet right now to our Twitter account. So Joe found one and shared it, and says robot landlords are buying up houses. Companies. This is a Vice article. It says companies with deep resources are outsourcing management to apps and algorithms, putting home ownership further out of reach. So if that sounds interesting, go to our Twitter account where you'll see Joe's tweet that I just twatted. And Katerina just shared one from SciTech Daily. It says groundbreaking new technology allows people to listen to music through touch. An audio tactile algorithm created by University of Malaga, that's in Spain, by the way. Scientists conveys melodonic information through vibration. And Katerina found another one. An AI found an unknown ghost ancestor in the human genome. Our family history is more complicated than we knew. BB shared one about the Chinese ballpoint pen, so I retweeted that. And Tom found one about the Twitter data leak, so I retweeted that. And then Eben found one from the Washington Post that says Twitter grapples with Chinese spam obscuring news of protests. Links to adult content overwhelming other posts from Chinese cities where rallies escalated. The A4 Revolution. What a cool name. White Paper Revolution, A4 Revolution, and the Great Porn Defense of 2022.
I've seen the blank paper revolution as well. That's the one that I think has the most traction at the moment.
I thought that shouldn't Hong Kong get some kind of royalties for that? They couldn't finance that thing.
Yeah, because in Mandarin it's white revolution as well. In Hong Kong's protest, yeah, they called it 白色力量, so white power.
You know what would be fun to see is if the mainlanders, as they're called, also copy the Hong Kong umbrella, because it was kind of called the umbrella revolution, if anything, in Hong Kong, because the resistance were using umbrellas and gas masks and everything else, and they put up. Gotta say, looking back, the Hong Kongers put up a pretty impressive resistance given the resources they had.
And yeah, it's very creative. And they said it's like Bruce like water. They were trying to form according to the force they were given. So it's very flexible.
A very feng shui concept of how to do protests. Yeah, which you would expect in the East. Anyway, but let's. This could get very, very, very interesting at the scale and rate that this seems to be developing.
I do have
And
a
I
small plug if that's all right. But if you are on
sure,
Twitter and you're interested, I'll be interviewing the deputy editor of Foreign Policy magazine, James Palmer, whose nickname I think is Beijing Palmer on Twitter, his handle. We'll be doing that tomorrow in a space. So if you want to chime in with any contributions or anything, then you're more than welcome. But yeah, that'll be at 1 o'clock tomorrow, I think, Eastern Standard Time.
very cool. So Ken found one about Amazon and Metro Golden Mare, MGM Studios. It says the pendulum is certainly swinging back. Why Amazon plans to spend $1 billion making movies for theatrical releases. The tech giant Amazon is planning to invest $1 billion to produce 12 to 15 movies a year, roughly on par with major studios like Paramount. And if is Ken with us or anyone else who happened to have read this one previously, they can clue us in as to why they're doing this.
Ken is here, but I think maybe he's busy.
Well, I'm quite curious myself. I mean, they're obviously doing it to boost um, Amazon Prime membership because they'll have exclusive on kind of blockbuster like movies. And it seems like the other players are not going to have the financial stomach to pursue that, and very notably Netflix. Apple might, but I don't think so. So I think this is a very clever move on Amazon's part.
There's been a large, I've seen this in Culver City, a large amount of companies, Amazon, HBO, and Apple, that have taken over the older studios and rented out or leased a lot of the old school lots. And they're shooting projects left and right. It's like become the new Hollywood. It's all happening in Culver City that I've seen in the last not even more than 4 or 5 years.
Here's the quote of the article. Much will come down to what kind of content Amazon produces, how long their windows will be, and how heavily it may lean on IP versus original material. But this is still resounding good news for theater owners and Hollywood, says Sean Robbins, chief analyst at Box Office Pro, explaining that more streamers committing to the theatrical window will help fill in calendar gaps for theaters. Quote, now that streaming has begun to mature, the pendulum is certainly swinging back towards a balance as these distributors see the kinds of success they've been having, or sorry, they've been leaving on the table with an all-in approach to streaming. Theatrical remains a very lucrative business model, and Amazon's new news underscores that again. And one other quote, uh, the debate is over. IMAX CEO says, the argument that you can skip theatrical window and make up for it on streaming just isn't true. The theatrical window is more essential than ever to getting the streaming revenue. Okay, so thank you for that, Ken. Next is from Karam from CNN. What travel warnings do other nations give their citizens about U.S. violence? From Australia to the U.K., CNN looks at what other governments tell their citizens about staying safe in the U.S. Poppy found one from Gizmodo. Elon Musk will make a new phone if Apple and Google ban Twitter. That was an interesting tweet that got a lot of attention. Somebody
And
said,
laughs.
well, yeah, what will you do if Apple and Google ban Twitter?
Yeah, I
Which,
did already. I set up a backup back channel in Signal.
and Elon's response was, well, I would hope it never comes to that, but if there's no other choice, then I would make a phone.
Yeah, and
I
a
was
phone is
And
a
it's
lot
not
less complicated than the cars that he makes, so I don't think that that's unreasonable either to say that he could probably pull it off. My only question is, would it look like the Nothing phone? Because that's my expectation. It would be like white
right,
Tesla-ish
too.
Nothing phone.
The first thought that went through my head, by the way, the Nothing team are kind of very dear friends. It's from
But that's
Stockholm, by the
Android
way.
too, right?
Yes, Nothing is a flavor of Android. However, the first thought that went through my mind is he would buy Nothing, the company, was just starting, and has impressive phone and earbuds and whatever. But it is based on an Android operating system. I don't know. I'd have to look deep at the. Somebody might know. Jennifer might know. The terms of the Android agreement, in terms of would he need to make a whole new operating system? No
Marketplace.
doubt he'll need.
New marketplace was the discussion that I heard.
Oh
Of
well,
course,
you
that's
know
going to
what,
be
Tyler? He
the
can
next.
use the Harmony OS.
Yeah, that would be ironic, but
A true
well,
harmony.
But at least they
no,
can use the web browser, right? Because
that's right.
yeah, use the web.
Yeah,
They could just make it a
so
sick
Twitter
web
would
app.
correct. Twitter would make it the best web app they could, basically. And Cheryl points to actually the actual answer of the riddle because uh, Huawei was banned from using Android, and they had to make their own store. So they made their own operating system called Harmony OS and their own store called the Harmony App Store. And they even paid me to promote it at my events. However, we did a discussion about it. I should say I'm not going to promote any Huawei shit, as you can probably imagine. But we had a discussion about it, and they did the check did clear. So the the interesting thing is that Harmony OS exists, and all it is a repackaged version of the Google Play Store, and the Harmony OS is a very barely modified version of Android itself. So Elon could do the same and make its own marketplace app store, just as Huawei did with their Harmony kind of rejiggering of Android.
Do you believe that the market space is there though, Tyler? Like, do you truly believe that it's not whether Elon can do it, whether anybody can do it in any sort of meaningful way?
Well,
Here's
so
I got a little bit for
Carl,
that. I followed that really that post really hard. What I noticed
hold on.
myself was that all the Apple, not all, a majority of Apple followers or people, they want to jump onto it right away. It was scary the amount of people that want to leave Apple iPhone and go to such a thing. Furthermore, and I'm sorry, I got a red bar.
No worries. But the if there's a lot of app, keep in mind, app developers are paying 30% to these stores. And if Elon comes out and does what Windows did and says, you keep all the money.
Or if he just does
If you,
8% for symmetry with the $8, that would
You,
also be funny.
you still
I
have a
want to
chicken.
correct that because that's incorrect information. It's 15% if you make less than $1 million on your
Exactly.
app, and it's 30% after that. So I mean, that's not correct. And 15% is nothing for what they provide, to be honest.
Yeah, you end up with
okay,
a
but
chicken and egg. Sorry, Tyler, go on. Go on.
so the number is over a million in revenue, right?
Right.
Okay, so anyone with an Office, any app that has more than one employee is paying about 30%. Um, so just to
I think it's
contextualize it
per
a little,
app, by the way. So if you're making a ton of apps and making more million, you're still paying
It's
15%.
separated across the app. Yeah.
okay, okay. So I'm trying to just help people understand that that basically applies to very very small apps, a million in revenue. So the very small apps are paying 15%. Anything above your cousin's, you know, app that he made it on the weekend is paying 30%. And I'm talking about Spotify and all the big apps who abhor and are suing Apple and Google whenever, however, and whenever they can. And you basically all of the apps that you know of um, would potentially unite
What
in
happened?
supporting it. We're, Francine, Dr. Francine, we're debating the the what's the word I'm looking for? I'm
Did
tired.
she
The
just have a mic?
viability.
Maybe she
Debating
just had
The
a hot
vi-
mic.
viability.
viability of, thank you, Carl, you read my mind, the viability of Elon's a statement of saying that if he really had to, if Twitter gets banned by Apple and Google of making his own phone, but what he really means is app store, and a phone to go with it.
Now
And
introducing the Elon One smartphone.
well, my argument is he would buy the nothing phone for next to nothing, and then rejigger it like Huawei did with their app store called Harmony OS and the Harmony Play Store, and then appeal to all app developers to stop, to do, they would fall over themselves to participate in an app store where they get to keep the lion's share of the revenue rather than giving up, in the case of all the bigger apps, 30%, and in the smaller apps 15%. I imagine there would be, you'd get a lot of apps promoting Elon's app store for him.
I think you do end up in a little bit of a chicken and egg situation where obviously you're getting a greater percentage of the revenue. The revenue needs to come from the users, so the users need to be there, and it's not a singular condition of users of what apps are available. For instance, like the selling point here is Twitter. Like from the user standpoint, the user doesn't care that the developers are getting a greater share. So what you want then is innovation. And somebody mentioned Twitter. And obviously, if you take Twitch and you take SpaceX, for instance, there was a lot of room there for physical improvement. For instance, in cars, there's physically a huge amount of size and there's a huge amount of improvement that you can do on the device that is a car. And he found that and he pushed along with 10,000 amazing people through this journey, has pushed car development to where it is now, thank God, and changed the world, thank God. But with phones, you don't have the physical space. We've seen innovation get slower and slower and slower. The innovation on screens has gotten slower and slower. And there doesn't seem to be, I mean, the electric cars were there. The innovation was always there. People were calling it out. It was just that the infrastructure and the public viewing of it, there was a huge amount of lobbying and everything from the traditional car companies that was stopping development on it. There really isn't that with phones. There are privacy concerns, but there's no dynamic paradigm shift in the actual hardware of phones that is being hidden or obscured or anything. Both Apple and Samsung and Huawei to a lesser degree are pushing as hard as they can to find every possible sort of improvement and whatnot. So I don't know what the hardware improvements would be.
It will be
So then,
glasses. It will be glasses.
well, it could be glasses, yeah, absolutely. But then all you end up with is the Musk brand.
And what's amazing is that with Starlink, it will be the provider of the service.
Ooh, integrated into the car as well. You can also call in a spaceship. It's awesome. We're the Jetsons all of a sudden.
So
I think
pricing
You
he,
can
he
do it
runs into the
for
same
free.
problem that other people run into trying to develop a Twitter alternative, and that is you've already got so many masses that have chosen their platform. He can come in with an Android phone. He's going to pick up people just because they're bought into Android, but he's not going to move the iPhone users. There's more and more. Those people are getting more and more
exactly,
entrenched
yeah.
into the Apple ecosystem. They're not moving.
Pricing is a really good one that I don't know who just mentioned that. If you can bundle that all together with Starlink and do some sort of competitive device like Tyler, the Nothing phone specs are fantastic, and I love the paradigm shift in design that they've done away from the cookie cutter Samsung iPhone clones that we've had. But there has to be something more there than just the Musk name.
Yeah, I mean, what could he do? Pay them to take the phone? I mean, Androids are pretty much already given away as it is, right?
So a couple of years
Yeah,
ago, there was like a
the
concept
Nothing
phone.
phone is like $500.
How many people would pre-order it, right? That might be a better question because I think that's also what he's famous for, preloading customer support. So when you look at like the next Cybertruck or the next whatever thing that he's
No,
offering, I think those are good examples.
here's what I meant. He could get Spotify, for example, to give you, I don't know, 6 months free of Spotify Pro, and every like the app developers would do his bidding for him because they would offer exclusive 6 month freeze on pretty much everything to get you over to start on that platform.
So a couple of years ago, there was like a concept phone, rumors by Tesla. The name was Tesla Pi phone. A bunch of people, including me, we send messages that we are waiting for the Tesla phone and when is it releasing. At that time, Elon tweeted that phones and smartwatches are a thing of past. Neural network is the future, and Neuralink is the future. So I'm not sure whether Tesla is planning to release any phone anytime soon. But even if they are, the possibilities that it's going to be connected more with Neuralink type of capabilities, also with Starlink, and also be able to be functional with spaceship and Mars related technologies. There were so many rumors and smart designs that the phone would have similar kind of capabilities like the truck, being very, secure and safe and made in a way that's indestructible and all the capabilities. I mean, there are a couple of articles on it that we all can Google and read, but then the rumors were kind of debunked because Elon's point at that point was that Neuralink is the future. We do not need a phone device. The idea is to control these devices, computers, and stuff with the Neuralink. But now, recently, if they are thinking about it, I'm not sure if they are. I'm just speculating. The phone is not going to be purchased, perhaps, but developed because people in the past were mentioning how the Cybertruck and the phone uh, can align in terms of shape and design and the material. And the capabilities of connecting with the Neuralink need to be developed from baseline. So none other phone would have those capacities or capabilities.
The more immediate, obvious benefit is that Twitter already has an ad network and an ad platform, and the data that you could harness from a mobile smartphone would enhance your ad network tremendously.
Well, it wouldn't be Twitter eventually, would it? It would be the X app, which he's been
Correct.
around with mentioning for years and years now. But Erin, you mentioned a really good point there about the whole long termism backed up with first principles is pretty much how the man operates, and actually spending what could potentially be tens of billions on a phone infrastructure um, would actually be at odds with that principle of what is the best solution, and we're only going to focus on that because it would be a short term. Well, I say short term, but the man operates in 50, 100 year sort of plans. The mission for Mars is evidence of that. So, yeah.
So one of the things that I brought up in one of the rooms was the person in charge of Neuralink there left and started his own company with a non-invasive method using the optic nerve. And I wonder if this kind of puts a wrench in the gears of his plans because this is a different company, and it seems like there's going to be some competition for Elon here.
Isn't he trying to acquire that one too now, though?
I haven't heard that. We heard the headlines when he
Does he have
left, and
an
I heard the
infinite
fundraising.
amount of money?
Yeah.
I think
No, I
there's
don't know that
one
that's a.
non-invasive one get already got FDA approval for clinical trial, human trials.
Yeah, and I thought Elon was in discussions with them. So it would make sense. You would want to partner with the most amazing technologies, and because it's so early, it's sometimes hard to see whether certain roads will pave out more than others.
Okay, next tweet. Katerina found one. It says a deep learning model that generates nonverbal social behavior for robots. I know that's obviously academic speak, but it says researchers at ETRI in Korea have recently developed a deep learning based model that could help produce engaging nonverbal social behaviors. And again, academics just can't help themselves. So, for example, hugging or shaking someone's hand in a robot. The model presented in a paper can actively learn new context appropriate social behaviors by observing interactions among humans. So let me unpack this for you. This is potentially huge. A, a, a camera connected to an AI, the AI through the camera can observe human behaviors and then mimic the behavior so that if a human walks up to a robot who happens to be trained with this AI model, and you go to shake the robot's hand, the robot will understand what you're doing and shake your hand. Or if you go to hug the robot will understand what you're doing because it's seen endless loops of people hugging each other and understand how that dance works, and then hug you. And then eventually you start doing the tango with the robot, and it can be your tango dance partner on the dance floor. No doubt that will happen. And eventually it will win all of the freestyle hip hop dance competitions at some point in the future. So the beautiful part of that, of course, is now that algorithm or deep learning model to be specific, is it precisely what is needed to train the robots in the warehouses, in the Burger Kings and McDonald's to act like humans that they're replacing, so that you can say, "Hey, C3PO, here's how you make a batch of fries. You take the bag of fries, you throw it in the fryer, and you go like this, and then you shake it like this. You grab the salt shaker, you shake it like that. You got it, 3PO? Oh, you're good. Go ahead and you try it." Right. That's what we need to get to train so that we can have robots at scale that will wipe out all humanity.
Or they'll be able to not allow us, or rather, it'll be not a limiting factor in terms of economic growth. There was one line that Elon actually mentioned recently. Somebody said, why should I invest in Tesla that trades at 70 times its revenue compared to Mercedes, which is 6 times or something like that? And he said something about his robot that if you remove per capita restrictions, it's potentially limitless, and that's actually a really interesting proposition for labor. But what those people do afterwards focus on creative work. So I think it's not necessarily the case that people will lose their jobs. I think just a lot more people will end up being able to spend time with their families, or at least that's the naive hope.
There's
Here's
sorry, Tyler.
real quick quote, and then do you, Carl. It says, "We showed that it is possible to teach robots different kinds of social behaviors, like hugging and shaking hands, using deep learning approach of just like learning by watching, essentially." That's huge. That's the unlock right there. So that your robotic arm that you're going to buy next year for under $1,000, because China perceives it as one of its highest priorities to build this robotic arm future that replaces humans in nearly every possible capacity in retail and whatnot. How easy, you've heard me do this rant multiple times, but how easy it is to program the arm is the critical linchpin to enabling that product market fit. So that if it becomes as simple as just showing the robot what to do, yeah, everyone can do that. You don't have to learn a programming language or anything else. You don't have to learn how to build a website or do any kind of fancy. You don't need a remote control in your hand and a guidebook of 1,000 buttons to figure out how to flip the thing. You just say, "Hey, watch what I'm doing. Do this," and then it does it. Next thing you know, um, you've got the robot revolution is afoot. So that's why this article is very interesting. And thank you to Katerina for that one. What were you saying, Carl?
I was just going to say that the aspect that nobody's mentioned is that there's a huge amount of context to language that we don't account for at the moment when we're interacting with our home assistants and things like that.
Hold on. Hold on. Hold that thought. Hold that thought. Hold that thought. I'm gonna fucking clap on that one. That's a, people don't understand how big of a point you're making there, Bill.
Yeah,
Because
go for it. Go on.
as somebody who has lived in many places with many different languages at many different times, language is really fucked up when it comes to trying to communicate, especially to a robot about doing things. So if you can do non-verbal teaching to a robot just based on watch what I'm doing and do this with very, very, very simple verbal commands that can remove the complexity of the verbiage, oh boy, does that get really interesting incredibly fast to try and simplify Carl's point. But I love what you're saying.
Well, that's why the Minecraft algorithm was so interesting. That just by watching footage, it can then navigate a spatial environment. So that's quite literally the task of a robot.
Okay,
Well,
well, I think
yeah, the
yeah.
embodiment thing is like a theory that you need embodiment to like generate more generalized AI or some form of consciousness and so on. So it will be interesting to continue to observe their work and other people's work that will build up on this. If uh, with the real AI embodiments like this, that it will grow faster. Basically, the development there too, and yeah, we'll.
Okay, well, with that, Ben has just opened his room,
Yes, it's pinned on top.
and yep, there we go.
Thank
So thank you,
you.
everybody. We'll do it again.